In the scorching summer of 740 CE, Japan's countryside, normally a tranquil expanse, was engulfed in flames of rebellion. The Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion, a pivotal yet forgotten insurrection, was unfolding in the eastern provinces of Hitachi and Shimsa. At its core was Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, a scion of the powerful Fujiwara clan, disillusioned with the imperial court's increasingly centralized authority. As the sun rose over Hitachi's rolling hills, Hirotsugu's rebel forces, a diverse assembly of disgruntled samurai, peasants, and local lords, mobilized. Their banners, emblazoned with the Fujiwara clan's emblem, fluttered in the gentle breeze as they marched towards the provincial capital. Tension hung heavy in the air as the rebels, driven by desperation and frustration, prepared to challenge the imperial court's authority. Hirotsugu's grievances against the court were multifaceted. He resented the growing influence of the Buddhist clergy, who had insinuated themselves into the highest echelons of power, and the erosion of the traditional aristocracy's privileges. The imperial court's attempts to consolidate power and impose a more rigid administrative structure had also sparked widespread discontent among regional lords, who felt their autonomy was being usurped. As the rebel forces approached the capital, the serene landscape transformed into a battleground. The clash of steel, the thunder of hooves, and the cries of the wounded filled the air. The imperial army, led by seasoned General No Azumabito, was hastily assembled to quell the rebellion. The two armies clashed in a frenzy of violence, their armor glinting in the sunlight as they exchanged blows. Despite being outnumbered, Hirotsugu's rebels fought with ferocity, driven by a sense of righteous indignation and conviction that they were fighting against an unjust regime. The imperial army, however, was better trained and equipped and gradually gained the upper hand. As the battle raged on, Hirotsugu's position became increasingly precarious. His rebel forces dwindled, and his own safety was in jeopardy. In a last-ditch attempt to turn the tide, he led a daring cavalry charge against the imperial lines. The clash of steel on steel was deafening as the two forces collided, but ultimately Hirotsugu's bravery was in vain. He was struck down by an imperial soldier, his body falling to the ground as his rebellion crumbled around him. The aftermath was marked by a brutal crackdown on the rebels. Many were executed or exiled, their families and properties confiscated by the imperial authorities. The Fujiwara clan, once powerful and respected, was left reeling from the consequences of Hirotsugu's failed rebellion. The imperial court emerged stronger and more centralized than ever, its authority unchallenged and its power consolidated. As the seasons passed, the Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion faded into history, a forgotten insurrection in a century marked by turmoil and upheaval. Yet the repercussions continued to resonate, shaping the course of Japanese history for generations to come. The imperial court's increased centralization, the growing influence of the Buddhist clergy, and the simmering discontent among regional lords all contributed to a complex and volatile political landscape, one that would continue to evolve and shift in the centuries that followed. As the sun rose over Japan's mist-shrouded mountains in the early 7th century, a palpable sense of transformation hung in the air. The once isolated archipelago was awakening to a new era of rapid change as the gentle whispers of Buddhism began to resonate across the land. Born in the distant mountains of India, this ancient religion had traveled the Silk Road, carried by merchants and monks to reach Japan's shores. Its arrival marked a significant turning point in the country's history as the Japanese people began to embrace a new faith that would forever alter the fabric of their society. In Nara, the bustling capital city, the sound of hammering and chiseling echoed through the streets as artisans and laborers worked tirelessly to construct grand temples and shrines. The magnificent Todaiji, with its towering bronze Buddha, stood as a testament to Buddhism's growing influence. As morning light danced across its walls, the temple's intricate carvings and vibrant frescoes seemed to come alive, casting a kaleidoscope of colors across the surrounding streets. As Buddhism took root, the Japanese state underwent a profound transformation. The imperial court, once a loose confederation of clans and regional lords, slowly coalesced into a centralized authority. The emperor, now a symbol of divine right, sat at the apex of a burgeoning bureaucracy, as officials and administrators worked to standardize laws, taxes, and governance across the realm. The once nomadic Yamato people, who had roamed the countryside, gradually settled into permanent villages as the concept of private land ownership began to take hold. The Fujiwara clan, a powerful and influential family, emerged as key players in the new order. As patrons of Buddhism and staunch supporters of the imperial court, they wielded significant power and influence, their name becoming synonymous with wealth, prestige, and learning. Their grand estates, with meticulously manicured gardens and ornate architecture, stood as testaments to their status, hosting lavish banquets and ceremonies where the elite of Japanese society gathered to pay homage to the Buddha and the emperor. However, beneath the surface of this glittering facade, tensions simmered. The rapid pace of change had created rifts and divisions as traditional ways of life were challenged by the influx of new ideas and customs. The old guard, comprised of regional lords and clan leaders, grew increasingly uneasy as the centralized state began to erode their power and autonomy. It was against this backdrop of transformation and tension that the Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion would soon erupt, a forgotten insurrection that would shake the very foundations of Japan's emerging state. As the sun dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over Nara's bustling streets, a sense of unease settled over the populace. It was the year 740, and the once stable monarchy teetered on the brink of collapse. Emperor Shmu sat upon his throne, his eyes fixed upon the intricate silk tapestries that adorned the palace walls, his mind consumed by the weight of his responsibilities. In this tumultuous atmosphere, Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, a powerful nobleman, began to secretly gather his forces. His ambition and discontent simmered like a pot about to boil over. As a member of the illustrious Fujiwara clan, Hirotsugu wielded considerable wealth and influence, with a network of loyal retainers and vassals at his beck and call. His family had long dominated Japanese politics, and Hirotsugu saw himself as the rightful ruler of the land. As he rode through the countryside, his horse's hooves kicking up clouds of dust, Hirotsugu's eyes burned with a fierce determination. He was a man of action, driven by a sense of urgency. The emperor, in his opinion, was weak and ineffective, unable to stem the tide of corruption and mismanagement that had plagued the government for years. Hirotsugu knew that the time for subtlety had passed, and he saw himself as the only one capable of bringing about the necessary change. Under the cover of night, Hirotsugu's messengers slipped silently through the shadows, carrying secret messages to his allies and supporters. They moved with the stealth of ghosts, their footsteps muffled by the soft earth, as they converged upon the nobleman's stronghold in Owari province. There, in the flickering torchlight, Hirotsugu's rebellion was born. The nobleman's plan was bold and audacious, a gamble that would either result in his elevation to the throne or his downfall in a blaze of glory. He would march upon the capital, his army at his back, and demand that the emperor step down in his favor. It was a risky strategy, but Hirotsugu was convinced that the people would rally to his cause, tired as they were of the monarchy's ineptitude. As the days passed, Hirotsugu's forces grew in strength and number, a formidable army of seasoned warriors and eager recruits. They were a force to be reckoned with, their armor glinting in the sunlight as they drilled and trained in the fields and forests surrounding Owari. The nobleman's charisma and leadership had inspired his followers, and they were ready to follow him into the very depths of hell itself. With his army at the ready, Fujiwara no Hirotsugu set his sights upon Nara, the seat of the Japanese monarchy. The fate of the empire hung in the balance, as the nobleman's rebellion prepared to shake the foundations of the throne. The stage was set for a clash of titans, a struggle that would decide the course of Japanese history for generations to come. In the misty dawn of 7th century Japan, the Fujiwara clan stood as an unyielding pillar of power, their influence intricately woven into the imperial court's fabric. For generations, they had masterfully navigated the complex web of politics, forging strategic alliances and securing key positions that allowed them to pull the strings of power from behind the scenes. Among their ranks was Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, a scion of this illustrious family, whose name would soon become synonymous with rebellion and defiance. The Fujiwara's rise to prominence began in the 6th century, when their ancestors, the Nakatomi, leveraged their connections with the imperial family to secure influential positions within the government. Over time, they cultivated a network of alliances, marrying into prominent families and strategically placing their members in key posts. By the 7th century, the Fujiwara had become the de facto rulers of Japan, their power and influence rivaling that of the emperor himself. Born into a life of privilege and expectation, Fujiwara no Hirotsugu was groomed to take his place among the ruling elite within the family's estate in the Yamato province. The sprawling complex, with its intricately carved wooden buildings and meticulously manicured gardens, was a hub of activity, bustling with retainers, servants, and advisors. Here, surrounded by the trappings of power, Hirotsugu received a classical education in Confucianism, Buddhism, and literature, and was trained in the art of warfare, honing his martial prowess through rigorous practice and competition with his peers. His family's influence had also secured him a position within the imperial court, where he rubbed shoulders with the powerful and the privileged. Yet, despite his privileged upbringing, Hirotsugu's ambition and sense of entitlement would soon drive him to challenge the very authority that had nurtured him. The seeds of discontent had been sown, and the stage was set for a rebellion that would shake the foundations of the imperial court and threaten the dominance of the Fujiwara clan. As the winds of change stirred, Fujiwara no Hirotsugu was about to become the catalyst for a forgotten insurrection that would leave an indelible mark on Japanese history. As the sun's fiery orb dipped below the horizon, casting a warm orange glow over the imperial capital of Asuka, Fujiwara no Hirotsugu's mind seethed with visions of grandeur. The once loyal minister, now consumed by an insatiable thirst for power, had long since abandoned any pretense of fealty to the ruling monarch, Emperor Suiko. His ambition, a raging inferno, burned brighter with each passing day, illuminating a path that led directly to the throne. In the opulent halls of his estate, Hirotsugu convened with his most trusted allies, a coterie of disgruntled nobles and military leaders who shared his discontent with the current state of affairs. The air was heavy with tension as they pored over maps, strategizing the most effective means of toppling the imperial government. The scent of incense wafted through the room, mingling with the whispers of treason that hung heavy in the air. Hirotsugu's eyes gleamed with an unyielding intensity as he outlined his plan, his voice low and urgent. He spoke of the emperor's weakness, of the decay that had set in at the heart of the imperial administration. He spoke of the people's discontent, of the whispers of dissatisfaction that echoed through the streets of Asuka Darigual. And he spoke of his own destiny, of the divine right that had chosen him to rule over Japan. As the night wore on, the conspirators dispersed, each one tasked with a specific role in the impending rebellion. Hirotsugu, meanwhile, retired to his chambers, his mind ablaze with the promise of tomorrow. He could almost taste the sweetness of victory, could almost feel the weight of the imperial scepter in his hand. In the days that followed, Hirotsugu's agents moved with stealth and precision, secretly gathering support among the disaffected nobility and the restless peasantry. They whispered promises of reform and renewal of a new era of prosperity and peace under Hirotsugu's wise and just leadership. And as the whispers grew to a deafening roar, the very foundations of the imperial government began to tremble. Emperor Suiko, oblivious to the danger that lurked in the shadows, continued to rule with a benevolent but detached air, surrounded by the trappings of power and the sycophants who fed her ego. But Hirotsugu knew that the emperor's grip on power was tenuous at best, and that with one swift and decisive blow he could shatter the fragile facade of imperial authority and claim the throne for himself. The stage was set, the players in place, and the fate of Japan hung precariously in the balance. The Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion, a forgotten insurrection in the annals of Japanese history, was about to erupt in a blaze of glory and destruction, leaving in its wake a trail of blood, fire, and shattered dreams. In the sweltering summer of 740 CE, Nara, Japan's capital, seethed with discontent. Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, a scion of the powerful Fujiwara clan, burned with resentment towards the imperial court. The source of his ire was Emperor Shmu's radical policies, which Hirotsugu believed were eroding the traditional fabric of Japanese society. At the heart of Hirotsugu's grievances lay the emperor's fervent adoption of Buddhism, a once obscure religion imported from Korea and China that had gained unprecedented popularity under Shmu's patronage. The emperor's enthusiasm was evident in the construction of grand temples, including the colossal Todai-ji, which dominated Nara's skyline. Its massive wooden gates, adorned with intricate carvings, of Buddhist deities seemed to whisper promises of salvation to the faithful. To Hirotsugu, these edifices represented a threat to the indigenous Shinto faith, the bedrock of Japanese spirituality. As Hirotsugu navigated the bustling streets, he was struck by the proliferation of Buddhist monks, their saffron robes, a stark contrast to the traditional attire of the Japanese people. The air was thick with the scent of incense and the soft chanting of sutras, a constant reminder of the emperor's attempts to supplant the ancient traditions of Japan. The very thought filled Hirotsugu with unease, as if the sacred rituals of his ancestors were being systematically dismantled. Hirotsugu's discontent was further exacerbated by the rising influence of the Soga clan, longtime allies of the emperor. This powerful family had begun to wield unprecedented power in the imperial court, with Soga officials occupying key positions and manipulating policy to their advantage. Hirotsugu, a proud member of the Fujiwara clan, felt that his family's interests were being systematically undermined by the Soga's meteoric rise. The Soga's increasing power was palpable in the capital, where their opulent mansions seemed to sprout from the earth like mushrooms after a spring rain. The sound of laughter and music drifted from their estates, a stark contrast to the austere simplicity of the Fujiwara residences. Hirotsugu's frustration simmered, a cauldron of discontent waiting to boil over. In secret, Hirotsugu began to gather like-minded individuals, disaffected nobles and warriors, who shared his outrage towards the emperor's policies. In hushed whispers, they spoke of the need for change, of the imperative to restore the traditional order of Japan. The seeds of rebellion were sown, and Hirotsugu, fueled by his dissatisfaction, stood poised to unleash a maelstrom upon the capital. The stage was set for a conflict that would shake the very foundations of Japan, a forgotten insurrection that would soon engulf the nation. As the sun rose over Japan's eastern provinces in 587 CE, a sense of restlessness settled over the land. Weary of the imperial court's oppressive rule, the once loyal nobles and peasants began to stir. Among them was Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, a charismatic leader who had long simmered with discontent. He saw an opportunity to capitalize on the growing discontent and forge a new path, one that would shake the very foundations of the Japanese Empire. With unyielding ambition, Hirotsugu set out to gather a formidable army of disaffected nobles and peasants. He traveled from village to village, his persuasive words resonating deeply with those who felt marginalized and overlooked by the ruling elite. The eastern provinces, long neglected and impoverished, proved fertile ground for his rebellion. As he traversed the countryside, Hirotsugu's charisma drew in followers from all walks of life. Nobles once loyal to the emperor saw an opportunity to reclaim their lost prestige and power. Peasants, tired of toiling in the fields for meager rewards, flocked to his banner, eager to overthrow the system that had kept them in bondage for so long. The air was electric with anticipation, as if the very fate of Japan hung in the balance. Hirotsugu's army swelled in numbers, a diverse and formidable force that threatened to upend the established order. His followers brought with them their unique skills and strengths, forging a potent mix of martial prowess and rustic ingenuity. The once peaceful countryside was now abuzz with the sound of clashing steel, the thunder of drums, and the cries of rebellion. The eastern provinces themselves seemed to conspire against the imperial authorities. The rugged mountains, with their treacherous passes and hidden valleys, provided a natural sanctuary for Hirotsugu's rebels. The dense forests, with their ancient trees and whispering leaves, hid secrets and sheltered the insurgents. The winding rivers, with their swift currents and hidden eddies, became arteries of rebellion, ferrying men and supplies to the front lines. As Hirotsugu's army grew in strength and confidence, the imperial court nestled in its comfortable capital began to take notice. The emperor, once secure in his power, now felt the first tremors of unease. His advisors, once complacent in their positions, now whispered warnings of impending doom. The once mighty empire, it seemed, was not as invincible as it had once appeared. At the heart of this turmoil stood Hirotsugu, his eyes burning with an unyielding passion. He was the master of his own destiny, the captain of his own fate. His rebellion, a beacon of hope for the downtrodden and the dispossessed, would soon shake the very foundations of Japan. The stage was set, the players in place, and the drama of the Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion was about to unfold. As the sun rose over Yamato Province's rolling hills, a sense of foreboding settled over Asuka, the capital city. The air was heavy with anticipation, as if the gods themselves were holding their breath in anticipation of the events about to unfold. In the distance, the sound of drums and clashing steel echoed through the valleys, growing louder with each passing moment. At the forefront of the approaching army, Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, the rebellious leader, sat astride his majestic black stallion, his piercing gaze fixed intently on the city before him. His armor, adorned with the emblem of his illustrious clan, glinted in the morning light, a testament to his unyielding determination to claim the throne. Behind him, a sea of banners fluttered in the gentle breeze, emblazoned with the symbols of the various clans and families that had pledged their allegiance to his cause. The rebels, a force of several thousand strong, marched in lockstep, their footsteps synchronized to the rhythmic beat of the drums. The earth trembled beneath their feet as they advanced, a testament to the sheer scale of their numbers. As they drew closer to the city, the rebels' war cries grew louder, a deafening cacophony that sent shivers down the spines of the capital's defenders. The Emperor's guards, stationed atop the city walls, peered out nervously, their eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the approaching army. They knew that Hirotsugu's forces were not to be underestimated, having gathered strength in secret for months, their numbers swelling with each passing day. In the city, panicked officials and courtiers scurried about, desperately seeking to prepare for the impending attack. The emperor, ensconced within the safety of his palace, received frantic reports from his generals, his face pale with worry as he grasped the gravity of the situation. Meanwhile, Hirotsugu's scouts had infiltrated the city's defenses, gathering intelligence on the emperor's forces. They reported back to their leader, providing crucial information on the layout of the city's walls, the deployment of the imperial guard, and the likely response of the emperor's generals. With this knowledge, Hirotsugu formulated his plan of attack. He would strike at the city's weakest point, a narrow gate on the eastern flank, where the walls were lowest and the defenders fewest. His most trusted generals would lead the vanguard, an elite force of seasoned warriors who would breach the gate and pour into the city, catching the defenders off guard. As the rebels approached the city, the air grew thick with tension. The emperor's guards, sensing the impending attack, readied themselves for battle, their bows strung and their swords at the ready. The people of Asuka, meanwhile, huddled in their homes, praying to the gods for deliverance from the chaos that was about to engulf their city. In a burst of color and steel, the rebels struck. Hirotsugu's vanguard, a wedge of gleaming armor and snorting horses, crashed into the eastern gate, sending the defenders flying. The sound of clashing steel and screams of the wounded filled the air as the rebels poured into the city, their war cries echoing off the walls. The fate of the emperor, and indeed the entire dynasty, hung in the balance. Would Hirotsugu's bold gamble pay off, or would the emperor's forces manage to repel the rebels and maintain their grip on power? Time would tell us the battle for Asuka raged on. As the sun's warm orange glow faded below the horizon, Emperor Monmu's eyes narrowed, his mind racing with the weight of the impending crisis. The news of Fujiwara no Hirotsugu's rebellion had reached the imperial court, and every moment counted. The rebel army, fueled by Hirotsugu's ambition and discontent, marched towards the capital, leaving destruction in its wake. Inside the palace walls, a sense of urgency gripped the air. Courtiers and attendants scurried about, their usually composed faces now etched with worry and fear. But the emperor remained calm and resolute, his years of experience and training in statecraft guiding him through the treacherous waters. With a swift stroke of his brush, Monmu issued a decree summoning his most trusted generals and loyalist forces to assemble at the palace gates. The sound of drums and conch shells echoed through the streets, calling the warriors to arms. The capital's defenses, long neglected in times of peace, were hastily reinforced as archers and infantrymen took up positions behind the city walls. As night wore on, the emperor personally inspected the defenses, his eyes scanning the battlements and the ranks of his soldiers. Torches flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls as he rode his horse along the perimeter, his presence a beacon of calm and authority. Inspired by their leader's resolve, the soldiers stood tall, their determination to defend the capital and the imperial throne burning brighter with every passing moment. In the rebel camp, Hirotsugu's army seethed with anticipation, driven by their leader's fiery rhetoric and promises of power and riches. But as they approached the capital, they were met with an unexpected sight. The imperial army arrayed in battle formation, their banners and standards fluttering in the gentle breeze. The emperor, seated on his horse, gazed out upon the rebel host, his eyes locked on Hirotsugu, who sat astride his own steed, his face twisted with anger and defiance. The air was heavy with tension, the only sound the distant rustling of leaves and the soft murmur of the soldiers. It was a moment of reckoning, a clash of wills and arms that would decide the fate of the empire. As dawn's first light crept over the horizon, the battle lines were drawn, the stage set for a conflict that would shake Japan's foundations. The emperor, his loyalist forces at the ready, stood poised to defend the capital against the rebel army. His determination to preserve the imperial throne and the realm's stability burning brighter than the rising sun. As the sun rose over Suruga province, mist-shrouded valleys awakened to the rustling of armor, snorting of horses, and anxious whispers. The stage was set for the decisive battle that would determine the fate of the Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion. The tranquil Fuji River, a stark contrast to the turmoil about to unfold, would bear witness to the clash of steel and the fate of a would-be usurper. On the eastern banks, General Ishikawa no Toshikami led the loyalist forces arrayed in battle formation. Their polished armor glinted in the morning light, awaiting the arrival of their foes. The imperial court's banners, emblazoned with the rising sun emblem, fluttered in the gentle breeze, symbolizing the legitimacy and authority Hirotsugu sought to usurp. Across the river, Fujiwara no Hirotsugu emerged from the mist, leading his rebel forces with a fierce determination to overthrow the imperial government. His armor, though less polished, was no less formidable, and his ambition burned with an intensity that galvanized his troops. As the two armies faced each other, the air was heavy with tension. Drums and conch shells echoed across the river, a primal call to battle that sent shivers down the spines of even the most seasoned warriors. The loyalist forces, a picture of discipline and order, stood firm against the rebel horde, which seethed and boiled like a living entity. The battle commenced with a hail of arrows darkening the sky as both sides unleashed their fury. The loyalist archers stationed on higher ground held the advantage, raining down arrows upon the rebels like a deadly storm. Undaunted, the rebels charged forward with ferocity, threatening to overwhelm the loyalist lines. In the chaos of the melee, Fujiwara no Hirotsugu rode forth, his sword flashing in the sunlight as he cut down loyalist warriors with reckless abandon. His presence inspired his troops, and for a moment, it seemed as though the rebels might yet emerge victorious. But General Ishikawa no Toshikami was not one to be swayed by fate. With a steady hand, he directed his troops, exploiting the weaknesses in the rebel formation and slowly pushing them back. As the battle raged on, the Fuji River began to run red with the blood of the fallen. The cries of the wounded and dying echoed across the water, a haunting chorus underscoring the gravity of the conflict. Despite the carnage, the outcome remained far from certain. General Ishikawa no Toshikami spotted his opportunity, seizing the initiative with a daring cavalry charge that pierced the heart of the rebel formation. Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, caught off guard, found himself surrounded by loyalist warriors. In the ensuing melee, the rebel leader fell, his sword slipping from his grasp as he crashed to the earth. The rebels, leaderless and demoralized, began to falter. Their lines wavered, then broke as they turned to flee in disarray. The loyalist forces, sensing victory within their grasp, pursued them with ruthless efficiency, cutting down any who dared to stand in their way. As the sun set on the Fuji River, the battle was all but won. The loyalist forces, their banners still fluttering in the breeze, stood victorious on the blood-soaked banks. Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, the would-be usurper, lay dead, his rebellion crushed beneath the heel of the imperial government. The Fuji River, its tranquil waters now stained with the blood of the fallen, would forever be remembered as the site of a decisive battle that shaped the course of Japanese history. As the sun dipped below the rolling hills of 7th century Japan, the tranquil landscape was on the cusp of a transformation that would forever alter the nation's trajectory. The Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion, sparked by the charismatic and disgruntled Fujiwara no Hirotsugu, would leave an indelible mark on Japanese history, setting in motion a chain reaction of events that would reshape the very fabric of society. In the years leading up to the rebellion, the imperial court had become increasingly fractured, with powerful clans and regional lords vying for influence and control. The Fujiwara clan, one of the most prominent and influential families of the time, had long been a thorn in the side of the imperial government. Hirotsugu, driven by ambition and discontent, sought to capitalize on the growing unrest among the nobility. As tensions simmered, Hirotsugu began secretly gathering support among the disaffected nobles and regional lords, whispering promises of power and prestige to those who would join his cause. His message resonated deeply, and soon a formidable coalition of rebels had coalesced around him. The stage was set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of Japan. In the sweltering summer of 740 CE, Hirotsugu's rebellion erupted as his forces clashed with those of the imperial government in a series of brutal and bloody battles. The rebels, fueled by their desire for power and prestige, fought with ferocity, pushing the imperial army to the brink of collapse. The very existence of the imperial court hung in the balance, as Japan teetered on the edge of chaos. But the imperial government, led by the wise and resolute Emperor Shmu, refused to yield. Drawing upon the wisdom of his advisors and the bravery of his soldiers, the emperor rallied his forces and launched a series of counterattacks that would ultimately prove decisive. The rebels, despite their initial successes, were slowly but surely pushed back, their ranks dwindling as the imperial army gained momentum. As the dust settled, the Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion lay in ruins, its leaders either slain or forced into exile. The true significance of this event lay not in its immediate outcome, but in the profound impact it would have on the course of Japanese history. The rebellion had exposed the weaknesses of the imperial system, highlighting the need for a more centralized and powerful government. In response, Emperor Shmu and his successors embarked on a program of sweeping reforms designed to consolidate power and strengthen the imperial court. The capital city of Nara, with its grand temples and imposing architecture, became the symbol of this new era of centralization, as the imperial government asserted its dominance over the regional lords and clans. As the Nara period dawned, Japan entered a new era of stability and prosperity, marked by a flourishing of art, literature, and culture. The imperial court, now more powerful than ever, would go on to shape the destiny of Japan for centuries to come. The Fujiwara no Hirotsugu Rebellion, though crushed, had left a lasting legacy, a testament to the enduring